Welcome. I am here today with Carol DiGiovanni. She is in Chico, California, and the founder of onFlume Coworking, which she told us the other day is because she is literally on Flume,
On Bloom
which
Street.
I
Mhm.
I did always wonder how you came up with that name. I was like, it must mean something.
That's
Okay, so Carol, I know a little bit about you because you've been in our community manager program. I was trying to remember when we first connected. I felt like it was before you opened, but did you join the program before you opened? I can't believe you've been open for almost 4 years.
we've been open for almost 4 years. It was just probably right about the time we opened when
Yeah.
I
Okay.
discovered you and
Yeah.
everything co-working. Yeah,
I I can't it feels like it's not possible that it's been 4 years,
I
but
agree.
yeah, it seems like it has. Okay, but I just went to your LinkedIn profile, which I have never looked at before. You have a totally unrelated career history, which
Yes,
I need to hear about. Can you give
of
us a little
the previous life, I was
totally?
an accredited appraiser in antiques and decorative arts, and I often did residential contents as well. So something I loved. My degree is in material culture, which is stuff. And so it was a great way to, still be a part of that world. And because to be honest, the least interesting thing about most antiques
Uh-huh.
is their value. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they're much more interesting just as what they are. And
And their stories and their journeys and
yeah,
yeah.
and there's the chance to do the research that I really love. And, you're not going to research a piece of decorative art just because usually. So it was always a fun thing and I loved doing it. And then pandemic and co-working and all kinds of things happened. And so after that, here I am running a co-working center, which I
But how do
never
you
dreamed of.
No, exactly. But also you would never dream of being an appraiser of antiques and decorative arts. How do you come into that? Like you weren't 12 and you were like, and what I would like to be when I grow
No,
up is this. Yeah.
you pretty much need to have been in that world for a while, either working in antique shops or, museums, something, art, fine art. I didn't do fine art, but you have to have a background and then you have to have a college degree and you have to
Yeah.
then get accredited through a major organization. And so there's a lot of work to it, but it was, like I said, it was a chance to really be involved with the stuff I really loved. So,
And where did you grow up on the East Coast
well,
or
I grew up in Southern California. I went to school on
okay.
the East Coast. I went to school in Boston.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
that's why I knew the Boston connection. And when I was looking at yeah, also interesting though, because California, so I'm from the East Coast where things are old. There are
yeah.
plenty of old things. And you could pop into a garage sale and there might be something very old there
Uh-huh.
just by happenstance. That is
Yeah.
not really a thing in California. So,
No, but auctions are great. And
okay.
I worked for a high-end antiques dealer straight out of college. And, there are lovely things. Of course, my degree was focused on American
Yeah.
antiques. And
Yep.
I was working for a guy who was bringing stuff in from France and England. But
Okay.
so, it's wonderful to be around old things that somebody made by hand and they have a story. And maybe you
Yeah.
can find out what the story is, maybe you can't. But
Hmm.
it's a lot more interesting to me than stuff that, bobs, in a big container across the ocean. And
Hmm.
so my best example is I bought myself a set of 8 numbered English White chairs, like of my dreams, through an auction. And I paid less for them, including shipping and tax, than if I'd gone to Crate and Barrel, and
Yeah.
bought a set of 8. And they're 200 years old and they'll last forever. They're amazing.
Incredible.
I know, and they're mine.
Yeah.
I never dreamed.
And they're still yours. I
Yeah,
love it. Okay, did
yeah.
you meet your husband in Boston? How did you end up in Chico?
My husband had got work here after graduate school, and so we moved from Boston to California and then up here, and we've been here ever since. So we've been
Yeah.
here like 37 years, 38 years,
Mm-hmm.
long time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So this is home.
Yeah. Okay, so take us on how did you come to be in how did you add co-working to you own some real estate So yes, you mentioned pandemic. Tell us the story of how
Right.
Carol, who was retired from her antiques and collectibles
Yes.
career, decided to start a brand new career operating a co-working space.
We decided during the pandemic, my husband in particular thought, we're going to need to pivot because we own a city block in downtown Chico and it's office. And so, of course, everybody was going home. And so we sort of circled back to an idea we'd had maybe 10 years earlier about co-working, which I think I bought a book through Amazon that was self-published, and we had a space that we thought would work for that. And our whole team said, great, who's going to run it? Nobody wanted to run it. And so the idea went away and then it came back. And the reason that we thought maybe it could work is that another co-working center was opening in town and they were renovating a building, which ended up being taken all the way down. And then they were building this beautiful copy shop in it. And it was causing a lot of buzz, but they were really selective about who they were going to let in. So we thought selective or, fine if you want to have a creative vibe, but what if we had it for the rest of the rest of us, And we had some lovely space. We did a little Tetris with tenants, moved them around and redid this space. And I agreed to run it for 3 months and I'm still here.
You drew the short straw.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Carol had to figure out how the business model works. Because right, you and your husband own this property, you have brokers who take care of getting tenants. Once you land a tenant, then that's a 5-10 year relationship. You go to bed at night, you're not worried, like the rent check is still coming.
Right.
And then the pandemic hits and you have to make the shift. So, but like heavy operations, hospitality, like totally different than
Totally
what you're
different.
used to. Yeah.
And I really hadn't been involved in running the buildings at all. Tom has now retired, so I am running the block and running the co-working center. The co-working center is the easy part at this point. Running the block is, not quite as much fun when you have to talk to HVAC contractors and plumbers and all the things. So the co-working is pretty easy now, but initially
4 years in.
right.
Yes.
Initially, I contacted you about everything co-working and I'm like, I'm an owner operator, but I need community manager because I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing everything. Yeah.
So that was really, really helpful. And we started up with DeskWorks right away. And so Barbara Springer was really, really helpful about really setting us up we just kind of copied them in terms of pricing and the different kinds of options, and we have lots of options, maybe almost too many. So that's how we came to be doing this, and it's worked. It's been a great thing.
Okay, and you started with 4,000, 5,000 square feet?
5,000 square feet.
Okay.
And now we're up to a little over 10,000.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely want to talk about that. And you started with some offices, dedicated desks, hot desks, some mail, but mostly just for your members, I think.
Mostly just for our members, yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about kind of what worked as you thought it would? What didn't work as you didn't, surprises, adjustments you've made along the way?
Yeah. People want private offices for the most part. We certainly have, flex desk users, members, and we have a couple of dedicated desk users. We have workstations, which are larger in our annex. Those are all taken, but they are just desks, open space desks, but that's taken by a larger team. We added some office pods because we had like 25 hot desks, flex desks.
That
so
just
that was
weren't moving at a rate that was helpful in terms of building your revenue. And
exactly. And dedicated desks, it's like, great, but I really just need an office.
Yep.
So those really they still are underused here, but we've added more private offices in the annex, 3 more, one of them a large team office. We've added a much larger conference room where we can seat 16. And we've added a big classroom, a training room where we can have 35, 40 people. So, and those have just been part of the reason doing that is because we own the real estate and we had people interested in the space, but wanting lots of tenant improvements that we really weren't interested in doing. So we decided, well, what the heck? We know what we're doing. Why don't we just take it ourselves? And it's been great. So,
What was your goal when you decided to flip to co-working originally? Like, was it, let's try to hit market rent? Did you think you'd do better than market rent? Like, what was your original hope?
mine was to hit market rent. My husband's was to exceed market rent.
Yes.
And he did pro formas that made it look like that was going to happen pretty fast.
Yes.
And it
Which is
does
very
not.
easy. It's very easy to make a pro forma that looks very good. Yes.
He's an optimist. I'm a realist.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's been a slow, very organic, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's what everything co-working helped to calm me down because I was like, what am I doing wrong? It's just building. And we feel like we've caught a nice kind of gear where we are steadily growing. We're not losing a lot of people all at once or anything. It's just a nice steady build. And because we own the building, it's really okay even if we have an off month.
Yeah.
Because realistically, I mean, it's the income from this goes to the buildings, So we do better than the per square foot number we get anywhere else in these spaces.
Yeah, so it's been a win, and yes, and it took a little longer than expected. And Chico is, I mean, it's 100,000 people, so it's not tiny, and there is another co-working space.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, I mean, it's still a smaller market, and co-working is probably still new. I would guess when you explain to people sort of what you're doing, you still get a lot of what's that?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. And what is this place? Sure, we do. But more and more people know what it is and that they've seen us or heard about us or they've seen our sign. And, oh, maybe I would like to not work from home. We have a new Flex Desk member whose wife has said, you have to leave every morning. Which we called for better for worse, but not for lunch.
I know.
Yeah.
Somebody should run an ad campaign about like loneliness and then like, marital satisfaction when you don't spend all day at home together.
Exactly. So we're dog friendly. So we have people who bring their dogs.
Wait, and you have a dog. Your dog.
I have a dog. I try to keep it to no more than 2 dogs in the space at a time. So she stays home a lot lately because we have a couple of often, dogs who come often with their people, which is fun. Everybody, like, their blood pressure drops immediately when they come in the door and they're greeted by a dog. So that's a good thing.
So when you volunteered to run the space for 3 months, you had some idea of what you thought that would be like. Do you like it better or less than you thought you would?
Oh, I like it much better than I thought I would. I like the people, while the other co-working center in town, which by the way is great, and they send us people and we send them people because it's a different vibe. We run quiet, they run, kind of busy and fun, and they have lots of events, and we have almost none. I just find that people here don't really want to come to a cocktail party. They want to go home or go to their kids' soccer game. So where was I going with this?
I asked you if you like it more or less than you thought you would. And you said you like the people. And
I like the people. So technically I get to choose, right? So in our member guidelines, I always tell people it's like 6 pages long, but the main thing is be nice and you're going to be fine. And that's the way it's turned out. People are nice and people are thoughtful and they respect the space. It's all good.
So I think I probably remember you feeling like you needed to be one of those community manager who like, well, we need events and we need, the things you do in co-working, which to your point, like that doesn't happen to be your culture. Can you sort of talk about that like discovery process and where you've landed with that?
lots of worked on, having a nice cocktail party, put all the food together and had one member show up, and then I think it was like a pity thing that he was, I can't leave these poor people here. So we did a Flumes giving one year at Thanksgiving time. It was all potluck and that was really fun. Now I have to figure out some sort of event for 4 years of being in business. But so in the end, I started asking people, what do you really want? And they said, just bake for us. So
Are you a baker?
I'm a baker,
Okay.
but if I'm a baker, I'm also an eater. So I can't bake unless I'm going to take it somewhere. So yeah. So that's I bake and I make sure there are lots of snacks and it's pretty easy. People don't have any surprises. I think their biggest surprise is they want to know how much to pay for the snacks when I say they're included.
They're just included.
They're
Yeah.
just included. The number that you get on your invoice every month is going to pretty much be the one you expect. So no surprise.
Okay. So, are you there all the time? How do you manage sort of like unstaffed time?
Right now, I have someone who covers for me on Mondays and Fridays, which is great. And that gives me, certainly on Fridays, I'm able to then, meet with the bookkeeper and do the kinds of things I can't do from the front desk. Mostly, I'm able to run a lot from my phone. So if I get a phone call and somebody's locked out, I can let them in. If somebody forgot to set the alarm, I can set it from my phone, stuff like that. So mostly if nobody's around or it's really quiet at 2:30 in the afternoon, I go home.
You just go. Yeah. You sort of learn the ebb and flow.
And again, everybody here is I trust them. There's a grown up and I have cameras, so I can check in and see what's going on. But yeah, it's pretty nice to have the technology to do all those things. I can't turn off the lights, but other than that, I can do most everything.
What is your lock system that you use?
We're using virtual keypad, which was kind of because NextKey dropped out all of a sudden. And I had like 30 days to find a replacement. So it's more than is necessary for what we do.
Okay.
It's kind of feels like we're a tech place and you need super security.
Okay.
But it's convenient. Everybody's got a fob and it lets them in their private office and I can give them access to 24/7 or just Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And, there's lots of flexibility to it. So it works. It was expensive, but it worked.
Yeah. So not only do you have a totally new career, but you're learning all sorts of new technology. It's like,
Probably good for my brain.
100%. I love it. Well, and probably good for you to, the whole like be at home, lonely, like you have your own community that you can spend time with.
I do. I like them. It's a nice thing. I have learned to memorize names, which is something I never could do before.
Yeah. That's really funny. I think I was going through our community manager. We have a lot of content at this point, but one of the modules is about how to remember names. I know, useful.
It is.
For people who aren't that good at it. I'm not great at it. Yeah.
I have to really work at it. And I used to think I'm just not good at it. And I thought, maybe I just didn't care enough to do it. So,
growth mindset. If you have to, you can figure it out.
So
Okay, wait. So I want to talk about a little bit of the things that you've added. So the pods were kind of a happy surprise. You were looking for these pods. So you had dedicated desks, flex desks. That you needed to sell more. People wanted privacy. So you found these pods on like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Where'd you find them?
I was communicating with Barry, and they had done a plan, and we had a price, and gonna do it. And I put something out on the Everything Coworking Facebook page saying, has anybody else used them in coworking? What do you think? And I got an email back from someone who was here in California who said, we've got a whole lot in our basement. We're getting rid of them. Do you want them? So
serendipity at its best.
Totally. Sent 2 men in the truck to pick them up and brought them here. And we have 5 pods here. We had enough extra material that we've used it in some other spaces, not as pods, but as dividers. So, people really like them.
So they have no tops, right? But
Correct.
they are lockable, like
They're lockable and they
offices
have
otherwise.
exactly. They have white
Yeah.
glass, and you can have there's 3-foot sections. So ours are, like 6 by 9. So 54
Perfect.
feet. And then there are
Yep.
2 desks and 2 chairs, and you can be in there all by yourself. You can rearrange it, got a file cabinet, and you can lock your door at the end of the day. So, and it comes with all those same credits to use for the conference room and the phone booth. And if you need to pop in and have privacy, you can get it.
And you found those sold better than a dedicated desk or a hot desk, even
They
without
do.
the sound privacy. And you had
Yeah.
like, I remember you have like a use case of like somebody who requires like a lockable space, but they don't really need an actual office.
They actually have an office. They have
Okay.
an office. I've never seen them. They don't have a key fob. They can't get into the space. Right. But they pay me every month, and they don't eat my snacks or use my toilet paper. So they're a good, they're great.
Yeah.
But we also have an attorney who's here. He had a full office in Chico, and now he's here once a week, and he's got a pod. It's all he needs because he can meet folks in the conference room.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then we've had a kind of a rotating group. Sometimes people are there just in a holding pattern, waiting for the next private office to come up. Sometimes they're there because their house is being worked on and they have to be out of their house in order to do their jobs. But they can be on their phone as long as we're not hearing both sides. So, somebody who worked for, I don't know, like Indeed or one of those was here. And it worked fine for her to be, back there.
Yeah.
Like I said, we run generally quiet, so it's really not a noisy environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you've expanded a little bit. So can you talk about your expansion decisions? Again, because you own the real estate. So you're making a decision of, okay, we're going to allocate this space to an annex, a training
Yeah.
room. Yeah, because you've
So
doubled
that
your
was,
space.
we did. And we were 3 years in, and we knew that we were getting calls from people asking for a larger conference room than we had and a larger training space. So we just didn't have anything near that. We couldn't even clear out the middle of the co-working center and let them use that or something. So we decided, look, we're not getting any rent on this space, but we are paying the, heat and cool and all of that. Why don't we just expand into the space ourselves and see how it goes? So by then I was expecting it to be slower than it was because it'd been slow starting this up, but it wasn't. We immediately had almost everything taken, and we were getting, reservations for the big conference room and for the classroom. And then we had a team walk in and say, we're getting rid of our lease. Our lease is ending in a huge space where we had 100 people. Pandemic happened. Now we have 30 people. They don't all want to come in every day. So they've essentially taken over all of the workstations over there. So we're full over there too.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how often does your training room get used?
I wish it would get used more,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it seems to be an organic thing where people are learning about it.
Yeah.
So I would say we have somebody in there at least once a month. And, what I've done is try to make it a little less expensive and a lot more flexible. Bring in your own food. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cater. So it's a flat fee for a half day or a full day. And they could bring in their own food. And again, it's one of these things where I get over there and they've bagged their trash and, pushed the chairs back in and done their best to be tidy.
Yeah.
And then they say, we'll be back, and that's, so we've had lots of repeat. Yeah, on that.
And tell me about your marketing. Are people finding these kind of organically? You're not running ads?
Nope. We ran ads at one point and got nothing, and absolutely nothing. And so the answer to our question, which is part of signing up, is, how did you find us? It's almost always Google or, a friend. So we have a couple of longtime members who they like to sing our praises. And so they send their friends, or they want to be close to their friend.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. So that's all we're doing right now. I don't run Facebook ads. It's mostly word of mouth and Google.
Okay, can we revisit? I remember you for a brief period of time hired a marketing agency,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you felt like this needs to go faster. I'm going to invest some money and try to make it go faster.
Yeah, exactly.
What like hindsight is 2020, but what advice would you give kind of somebody else who, was in that seat? Would you do it again? Would you tell them to be patient? It's
I
hard
think
to not do anything, right? You want a lever to
it
pull.
is.
Yeah.
You're right. I would say the organic which was, I was told too, organic is going to be your thing and that'll be the better way to go. What I think I would say is find someone who specifically works with co-working,
Mm-hmm.
because the group that we used is local. They're great. They're well known. Didn't work. So I would say I wouldn't do that again. I think I'd try to be patient, but it's hard to be patient if you,
Yes.
yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
did, we did kind of flip the switch and do flex space, which,
Yeah. I wanted to ask about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Because you're in a smaller market, so it's hard to know, is that gonna work or not? Yeah.
yeah. And it was just sort of radio silence in the beginning. And then now we're getting it. And that's another nice thing about being a single person running the, space, just single operator, is when I get a phone call and I'm driving down the street, and someone wants to book something and they've got a question, and I can say, great, you can just actually go right onto our website and,
Yeah.
click book now, and
Yeah.
and you can get in on your own. If I'm sitting at my desk, then I prefer to do it, through me and not through FlexSpace. But
Yeah. And it'll be super easy for them to do and use and like really seamless. And they can do it on their phone if they're on their phone.
exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is making sense for you. Do you think that's people who like because they don't have a platform, like it's coming through your website, but you
Mhm.
I'm guessing you like the interface and how easy it is to sort of do the checkout and the user experience.
I do. And it's funny because some of our liquid space users have flipped over to FlexSpace.
Oh.
So
Mhm. Okay.
I think they go to our website and think, oh, just do that.
Just yeah, and they find it. And it is not,
Mhm.
I do like that about FlexSpace is it lives it's yeah. But they do find it right through your website. It's not a
Yeah.
marketplace. So
I think
all
people
those
Google
customers.
co-working in Chico and then they come to,
Yep.
we rank usually above the other one because we have more reviews.
You do.
Um,
I know I was gonna give you a high five for that. I was just looking and I was like, Carol, you have more reviews than the other
yeah, but you should scold me
space.
because I could have a lot more by now if I were after that. These are the things that's one of my goals for
Yeah.
getting some more so that they're more current. But
Yep.
yeah, so we come up and our hours are more flexible. I'm more flexible. I can
Mm-hmm.
be because this is our business and our building, and I'm not an employee.
Yep.
So it's easier for me to do that stuff.
You're in charge, completely in charge. Yep.
Yeah, I am. And I
Whether
like
you want to be or not, I guess some
kind of,
days.
yeah, but and it's easy to do simple favors, and that makes people pretty sticky because they feel like this is their place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's nothing like a space run by an owner, even if there are days when. Okay, you've taken a vacation in 4 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And sometimes I have just put up a sign that says unstaffed.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
let everybody know I'm gone. And if
Yep.
you need me, if I've got an internet connection, I can unlock the door for you or, do whatever.
Yep.
One of our longtime members, I just put her on so that she can actually get into our back end and
Nice.
desk
If
work.
necessary. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that all works. It's kind of like, getting a dog sitter. It's
Mhm.
harder than leaving here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Seriously, I have two dogs, and that's often the case. Lots of planning ahead for where would the dogs go.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to sort of your mindset as an owner. I know recently you had some space that was open and you were looking to fill it and you thought, well, I can just convert it to co-working. Like I know that works.
Yeah.
And you had a negotiation with a tenant and they ended up taking it. Can you just talk about sort of like that
Sure.
mindset of like, well, I have a plan B.
I think that was just it. It was actually a tenant had moved out and she was trying to sublet the space for 6 months, which was never going to happen. And so we were just going to wait that out. and turn it into co-working because there are lots of offices. And it's right across our, like back door into another space. And I have people looking for private offices and it's lovely space. So that was the plan. And then a tenant, a good tenant, said they would like to have the space. And I said, well, fine, make us an offer. And they came back with a super low ball offer. And I think it's because brokers are really feeling like, hey, you have office landlords over a barrel. So let's offer less. And so our response was to say, if you want it, take it as is, no free rent, and you can match up the lease you have now so that it'll all sync up. And they said, oh, okay. That's it.
Right. But you having that confidence of like, well, I have another option and I know I have a waiting list for offices. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I have learned that being indifferent is a really great negotiating tactic. And so I've learned this from my brother-in-law, and it's true. If I'm indifferent, or if you want the space, you tell me. So I've learned a lot of stuff I didn't think I'd ever need to know, but I can still do it. So okay,
totally. So can you just, I think it's so interesting that you have both, like you own the real estate and you're operating. And so the mindset of the owner, because a lot of operators, don't realize, when you talk about, because some people are thinking about trying to get tenant improvement dollars from an owner, right? And signing a lease. And, it's a really significant investment for the owner or for somebody who's leasing. It's much better when you're on the ownership side to make that investment because that's your asset forever. Until it's not, until you sell it. But you said, resistance about tenant improvement dollars and, can you just talk about like how an owner thinks about tenant improvement dollars and how long it takes to get that investment back in rent? Like,
on some level, we've owned these buildings for over 20 years. And so we've put up walls, we've taken down walls, we've, done it all in all the spaces more than once. And I don't think my husband reached this point, but I reached the point where I was like, I'm done knocking walls down and building up more walls that are going to get knocked down next time.
Yeah.
So we've been, we've been good owners. We have invested in the buildings. We maintain the buildings well. The spaces are all nice. So, if this works for you, great. If it doesn't, and, I'm not going to invest $200,000 to add bathrooms for you. I'm not going to do it. So, and, we've had huge people in one of our buildings, just like a huge company that pretty much ate up the whole building. And then they shrank a little and then the pandemic came and they went away.
Gone.
And so putting walls back up, and who our tenants now are the kinds of tenants who have to have a space. We have a preschool, we have another school, we have co-working, and we have some mental health type businesses. They have to have a space. So that's why they're here. The other thing that's we just finished refinancing our commercial loan on the buildings. And boy, the pandemic hit and nobody wanted office.
Yeah.
And so as that loan was coming up, we were with a national bank that literally knocked at our door to give us a loan. They wanted us to go away. And so we talked to a community bank and they were all, gung-ho about it. And then they couldn't quite figure out the co-working piece. Interesting. Huh. A regional bank totally got the co-working. Okay. It was like, what they almost want to say, since it's co-working, it's not a lease. We don't really think that counts. We're going to take that out of any kind of valuation of your buildings. So we did finally end up with a regional bank that said, great, we get it. We think this is the way officing is going to go. So if somebody's been reading articles instead of just, I don't think bankers are the most, by nature, they're probably not the most, creative thinkers.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and they're risk averse because they have models and yep.
I'm risk averse too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this conversation you have, and again, you have that mindset of both the operator and the owner, and understanding that it's very hard, I think, for operators who are signing leases to understand, yeah, the challenges of an owner, and that it's not, I think we think of like people who own commercial buildings as this like, off in the ether, like, plenty of liquidity and no problem putting in TI dollars
Right.
when those investments take a long time to pay back in rent.
Hmm.
Like that's a pretty straightforward equation. And you have
Yeah.
broker fees and you have all of these expenses that, and I'm guessing for you too, like so wasteful when you're doing this like every 5 years, or,
Hmm.
even if the math works, you're like, what a process. And you kind of got, done with doing that.
Yeah. I'm way done. Tom was much more into that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But we are truly a mom and pop operation.
Hmm.
So, we have, I think our bandwidth is maybe narrowing a little bit right now. And I don't think investing in some of the kinds of improvements that were being requested would really pay off in the end. So
Yeah. So it's an interesting time because, right, people think, well, if an asset owner has office space, then they'll take whatever they can get. But there's still an ROI for the asset owner to have to make that investment. And can they get it? And to your point, very demanding tenants just may not be a fit.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a separate LLC for the co-working business
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
pays rent into your, okay.
Yes.
So which makes complete sense to me, and then the regional bank was like, yes, we count that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and good old desk works. I can push a button and have
Yep.
it show,
On your,
exactly
hmm.
what we bring in,
Yeah.
and the trajectory has been nothing but up. So, and I think, you know, it's obviously a legitimate business.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they would have a problem with it in the beginning, but they
Yeah.
did. And so
Yeah.
it was nice to finally find someone who kind of gets it.
Who got it? Yeah. I think that's one of the big advances we'll see in the industry. And I mean, I don't think we know how long it'll take. But we talk about that a lot, sort of like behind the scenes. We think that'll be a real tipping point
Yeah.
when the banks really understand and know how to value it and support it, like the
Yeah.
regional bank that you found. So
Yeah.
that'll be a big deal in our industry for other asset owners and their ability to take on co-working operators or do it themselves.
I think so
Yeah.
too. And, I know that sort of in larger metro areas where there really see-through buildings, people were putting buildings up during when the pandemic hit. That stuff's pretty hairy, but they are making those kinds of shifts even back there. Even I'm thinking of the Boston area where they're actually figuring out ways to, use those spaces, and especially for venture capital stuff where they don't want to get you a big lease and spend $1 million on furnishing it. They say, go over there and see if it works.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, mhm. So we're not doing, like a full floor of a high rise, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, one of the questions I wanted to ask is for other building owners thinking about co-working, and I know every market is different, but do you have any advice to give, like before they dive in, like anything that you've learned that you would do differently if you were starting over?
I think if I were to start over, I would really work hard to figure out how to do sort of pre-marketing. That didn't cross my mind when we were starting all of this, because I was thinking, well, how can I pre-market a space? I don't know what it's going to
Doesn't
look like
exist.
yet.
Yeah.
It does,
Mm.
we talked about it, but other than that, and the other co-working space in town had pre-marketed, and they had been out, doing free coffee for people
Yeah.
because their coffee's really good. And I think that was smart, and they were full kind of the day they opened. So I would try to find a way to do that. I don't know that I don't have an answer for how to do that,
Yeah.
but I would try to find a way to do that. I'd also, for sure, it was really helpful to work with the DeskWorks folks and Barbara Springer. But I think everything co-working you've got a group for people who are going to be thinking about doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Think about it a lot, and I would say realize that you're probably going to have a slow build. So if if that doesn't work,
Yep.
then maybe it doesn't work,
Yeah.
but a slow build is probably what's going to happen unless you figured out that pre-marketing thing.
Yep. And more offices. I'm guessing your office is filled faster.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. I would not have as many flex desks. I probably wouldn't even do dedicated desks. I didn't want to have to build walls. We built some,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, that is the big trade-off. And when I work with landlords, I always start with, right, what do you need to, what's your hurdle? You said, well, I'd love to make, market rent and help them understand, right, how long that may take. And then their assumptions about, well, they never know what the expenses are. There are a number of expenses in operating a co-working space that just are, sort of hidden and people don't see. So I, talk to brokers or asset owners who just think, well, I know I can charge this much for an office, so here's my top line revenue.
Right.
And they just don't know what the, operating expenses look like. And that actually when you get to the, the bottom line, to clear rent is still a hurdle. And that choice about how many offices do you build, like that's an investment up front. And you have to, look at what the return is on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, often we'll have someone say, well, gosh, that's a really high number per square foot.
Yep.
Well, yes, it is, because it includes all these things that you now don't have to do. And that we really have had a lot of people peel out of leases and come to us. And sometimes like they try to fit their whole like 300 square foot office into my smallest office. But
They figure it out.
they figure it out.
Yeah. And you're so used to, again, you have that, like you understand that people are comparing, and they're thinking in terms of square feet. I mean, your brokers, you've been selling that way for years, right?
Yeah.
So you understand that mindset and helping people to make that shift.
What's funny is we have a pair of commercial brokers here who, they've got an office here because they peeled out of some other group. And initially, their group was looking at taking our largest space that we have now as our annex. And that kind of fell apart. So they know, they like it. Their people keep coming through the door.
Yeah.
And I don't pay commission. Not here, not at onFlume.
Yeah.
I pay commission for, somebody taking a lease in the space.
Right. Yeah. So you still have a kind of a hybrid. Yeah, I love it. Okay. What else do I want to make sure what has been the hardest or most surprising part of running a co-working space?
Oh, I think I'm surprised that I like it a little bit. And I think the hardest part is really just being a little more tied down than maybe I'd like to be. It is not as creative, maybe, as I would love to have it. Once doing the space was creative, that felt great. But all in all, as a job, it's pretty easy. And I do like it. And it's good for me too, to get out and do stuff because I'm a homebody. So if I didn't have to go anywhere, I wouldn't.
You'd be at home baking, maybe reading, hanging out with the dog.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay. You have been a part of our Community Manager University. You're in our operator mastermind, and you've done I know, reluctantly done our mailbox challenge. Can you just share a little bit about kind of from your perspective, getting outside support as you've gone through this journey and what that has been like?
Invaluable. Honestly, it was just felt like such a stroke of luck that I don't even know how I found the podcast. And then I looked you up online and then, oh my gosh, look at all these resources. So that was amazing. And mostly women, mostly the young women, there were men too, but in the community manager group,
it is a lot of women. Yes.
Yeah. But they're so bright and they have all these great ideas, and co-working seems to have such a sharing ethos, just like us working with the other co-working center. It's a nice thing about co-working. It feels very community oriented. So that was really, really useful in the beginning. Switching over to the owner operator has helped a lot too, because I realized at some point I'm not going to be putting on events. And I, write a newsletter, but not as frequently as I should and all those things. But the owner operator helped me since I ran my appraisal business by myself because it was just me. And so this was like, you guys are often talking about, Excel spreadsheets. It's not anything I ever do. So it was helpful to get in the owner operator group. And then I think that then the mail group was also helpful. It kind of, for me, I knew that it was not, I don't want to have aggregators for mail. And I have, again, organically been filling up my mailboxes. I have, I think, 48 of them. And yeah,
All your own leads. I love that.
all my own leads. And it's, people have a fob, they can come and pick up their mail.
Mhm.
If they're out of town, sure, I'll scan it. You need me to forward it to Iowa? Okay. Yeah, I'll charge you for it, but yeah, I'll do it. So it's a pretty easy job, I gotta say. I could
Well,
work a lot harder.
Well, and partly you're doing it your own way and
Mhm.
what works for you and the community you're in and your space. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that about you. And I'm glad you found us because I have loved getting to know you. And I mean, I love our operator group because people share. I mean, you shared, your example about the negotiation last time. And we had another operator who owns her building who was negotiating. And there's just so much, power in that. And I never knew about you that you had this whole other career. I mean, I just never thought about it. So it's so fun to get to know people's backstories. I love doing podcast interviews because then I learn all the things we don't talk about on Zoom in a group.
In a group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun.
What do the next couple of years look like? Do you think things will any changes in the works for onFlume?
I think right now I'm feeling like we've just made it through this whole commercial loan refinancing and I'm feeling like steady as she goes, just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one foot in front of the other. But then I lie down in bed at night and start thinking about what would I like to do to get this to that next level. And I don't have an answer for that yet, but I definitely want to keep going with it and see what we can get. I probably need to keep to my 3 days a week instead of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest goal is going to be to find somebody who's a permanent fixture for that and make sure that we can pay for that with onFlume. So
yeah. Well, and the expansion helps with that.
The expansion helps a lot. And I think for me, it's going to be to do a little more work on getting people into that classroom and and I want to rethink what to do with the dedicated desk area.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a group in who had a private office with us and they just kept growing and they were completely growing out of their private office. And they were really enthusiastic about the idea of getting rid of the dedicated desks and putting in like a lounge area.
Oh,
where I didn't want to put in
for them, basically.
For them, like they like to go sit and work with their laptop in their lap. And and I'd see them around, it was fun to watch the desire lines of people like sitting in a chair and doing stuff instead of being in their office. And so that's one thing, thinking about maybe doing a little reshifting of stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing giant.
Mm-hmm. Good. I like it. Thank you for sharing your story, Carol.
Thank you for asking, Jamie.
Yeah, this was so nice. And thank you for being a part of our communities because to your point, co-working folks tend to share, but that is we need the inputs for that. We need people who want to share. And I love our group. We have some power ladies who have great experience and are willing to share what they're up to. So yeah, thank you.
Keep that. Thank you.